Welcome, everyone. I'm Sophfronia Scott, and this is YA and the MFA, a virtual open house to provide you with some information about our wonderful low residency Masters in Fine Arts program at Alma College. I'm with Dhonielle Clayton. I will introduce her in a moment. She's a fabulous faculty mentor in our program. So the Alma College MFA in Creative Writing is a low residency program. Actually, I'm going to share my screen and show you a few things about the program. Here we are. And this is a fabulous photograph of our first cohort and faculty. This was from our summer residency that we just had this past June. The Alma MFA is a low residency program, which means that you do not have to quit your job, move to another part of the country to pursue this degree. It is a 2-year degree, and you are only required to be in person twice a year for a 10-day residency, one in the summer and one in the winter. During that residency, you attend faculty lectures, workshops, and you are paired one-on-one with a faculty mentor with whom you will develop an intense 5-month program of study, reading list, and a schedule of creative and critical writing that you will turn in on a monthly basis. During this time, you will learn, upon graduation, you'll find that you'll be able to demonstrate a strong proficiency of writing skills, including the use of organization and structure, an in-depth use of language, forming and communicating well-developed ideas, creative thought and expression, craft. You will have a language for what you do and what you do well. You'll be able to lecture and teach on that craft. You'll be able to read and think critically as a writer. Our program also believes strongly in professional development. So you will get a knowledge of the publishing industry, including how to get work published in a variety of venues. Now, I have Dhonielle with me this evening because we are going to discuss the question of, if you are a writer for young adult and children in that particular market, what is the MFA about for you and why pursue it at that level? But first, let me introduce the wonderful Dhonielle. Dhonielle Clayton is a New York Times bestselling author of the Bells series, Shattered Midnight, and she's co-author of Blackout and the co-author of the Tiny Pretty Things duology, a Netflix original series. She hails from the Washington, D.C. suburbs on the Maryland side. She taught secondary school for several years and is a former elementary and middle school librarian. She is COO of the nonprofit We Need Diverse Books and president of Cake Creative, an IP story kitchen dedicated to diverse books for all ages. She's an avid traveler and always on the hunt for magic and mischief. And up next is this wonderful book that we heard her discuss this summer, The Marvelers, her middle grade fantasy debut. You can find her on social media at Brown Bookworm. Thanks for joining me this evening, Dhonielle.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited. I always love spending time with you.
Thank you. So tell me, let's start generally in thinking about the MFA. Why do you think it's a great program for writers in general?
I love the MFA, one, because you get to decide for yourself that you're going to take your writing seriously. You're going to take the time out of your everyday schedule and say, I'm a writer and writers write, and I'm going to be in a community of writers. And so the MFA provides that. It provides a structure for you to focus solely on your writing and to find like-minded individuals. If I didn't have that, and excuse my wristbands because I've been writing all day, so I'm in therapy mode, it was my gift to myself saying, I'm a writer, writers write, they have a community of writers, and they take time to study the craft of writing. I'm very much a big proponent of, if I'm going to do something and I want to do it well, I'm going to study it. And so that's what the MFA program is to me.
I'm going to show another screenshot because you use the word community more than once. And I don't know if you've seen any of these, but these are photos from our first residency. And the wonderful thing about being in person, I was so happy we were able to be in person, is that there is a certain kind of magic that happens when you are in community with other writers. The conversation tends to overflow. It's not just in the lecture, it's not just in workshop, it's after lunch, it's after hours. It's just in being together to talk about writing, and you'll find that there are people who are just as in love with writing and wanting to talk about it with someone, because the people they have at home, their friends and family, may know nothing about what it is they do, but here you can be totally in your element.
It's so nice to find people you can talk about dragons with, right? Like, or like whatever it is that you're writing. Sometimes you sound, if you want to talk to someone who's like not into books the way you are, into writing, it's like really hard. They look at you like, wait, what are you talking about? Or you're like, oh, I'm writing this book about a serial killer and blah, 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 blah. And they're like, what? I don't understand. And this is a place for you to talk about all of the things that you're working on in your novels.
So one of the things I remember Donald talked about this, about the difference between a traditional program where you do leave your life and you're full time in the program versus the low res, that this more accurately models what a real life writing life looks like, right? Because even after this program is over, you're going to be doing this balance, right, of writing and doing the rest of your life.
Exactly. What's so interesting is that I have experience with both. I got an MFA in a traditional program, and it was like I had to move to New York. It was twice a week. It was every week, like and I did that for 2 years. But then I got my master's in children's literature at a low res program, and I had to go away for 6 weeks. So it was a little bit more intense, but I loved being able to say, this is my time. I have these many weeks, and this is what I have to do. And I have to like use it well. And then I go back home and put into practice everything that I've done, and foster the relationships that I've made. And I found that my MFA, my MA program, my low res prepared me a little bit more, because this is what the writing life is like. For me, I have bursts of energy, and I'll be writing for 2 weeks. Right. And then it's like life happens. And then 3 weeks go past, and I'm like trying to make everything work and get to appointments and and then I'm like, I have to get back to my book. And then I'm back in it. 2 weeks intense. Right. And then I'm in and out. And that for me mirrored my writing life. That sort of little bit of creative chaos that happens. And I love the low residency because you get to have this organized creative burst. You're coming, and you can prepare for it, and you can soak it up while you're there. And then that fuels you for the rest of the year until you have your next one, right? And it creates these peaks and crescendos that I find nice in your creative life.
I like the way you describe that, peaks and crescendos, because I've always felt, people talk about balance, right? Oh, we want to work-life balance and things like that. I honestly believe balance does not exist. That you're always like this or like this. And like you said, 2 weeks you're into the book, and then you come out of it and got to catch up with the rest of your life. And your life kind of tilts the other way. And then you go back into it again. I think that's just the way that things happen.
Absolutely. And it's the way it has happened for me with my career, where I'm like, I wish I could write every day, but I can't. Like, it's one of those things that I'm hoping one day I can, but there's just lots of responsibilities. There's phone calls, there's things that you have to do. And I like that when you have your low res, for 10 days, this is it. I'm putting all the people in my life on notice for 10 days. These are mine, and I'm going to be here, and I'm going to be writing. And you have to text me because I'm in the zone. I'm busy. And I think if you can give yourself those 10 days, I mean, you deserve it. You deserve to be able to carve out that time for yourself.
Yeah. So with the YA genre, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's different. It's separate from literary fiction, from from what that weird term, women's fiction,
And upmarket fiction too.
Upmarket fiction, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you feel it has been approached in the MFA world? Because MFA is usually focused on literary fiction.
Right, which is so interesting, right? Children's literature and literature for young people, young adults included, has all of the different genres within it. So you have your literary children's fiction, you have your upmarket children's fiction, you have your whatever women's fiction, chick lit, you have your like little tween and like kind of fiction, you have your thrillers, you have your science fiction and fantasy. So within the big sort of, let's say we're in a supermarket of books, in the children's and young adult section, it's the same kind of genre distinctions and same different kinds of categories. But what has happened is that when you enter the MFA space, all of the people who write for young people get sort of segregated and relegated to their own little cabal, right? Their own silo. And this happens for a lot of reasons. It can be snobbery. It can be sort of people not understanding that story is story, regardless of the protagonists that you're writing or the lens with which you're writing from. Good story is good story, right? And I think that sometimes in the MFA world, people don't want to learn how to analyze or read or critique or look at books and poems and nonfiction that is aimed at an audience that they're not used to, even though we were all children. No one was born an adult. And so in order for you to be coming to an MFA program, you were once taught to read, and you were taught to read with children's books. And so everyone has had a relationship with children's books. And when we get older, I think this sort of, and we're trying to become more, we want to become writers and we're wanting to enter the literary community, it becomes like, oh, what group am I entering? What part am I going to go into? And this little pocket tends to sort of be sort of segregated out of the MFA space. That's why Alma is very exciting. There are programs that are just devoted to children's literature and young adult literature, but I really like the idea of us all being together, because story is story. You will become a better writer having read other works by other people, especially ones that are aimed at young people.
Yeah, Dhonielle, it was my experience when I got my MFA that it sort of broke me open to realize that I could write in other areas, right? I came solely thinking about writing novels, but I came out of it writing essays and poetry and writing about faith. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted the YA to be strongly represented in the program, because I wanted people to see that they can write this as well, right? That it's not this separate thing. Now, E.B. White is one of my favorite writers. And we think of his, This Is New York, but he wrote Charlotte's Web,
which is one of the most beautiful children's books of all time.
He wrote Stuart Little, and he wrote for the New Yorker.
Mm-hmm.
So as you said, those are beautiful stories. We remember them because they're beautiful stories. Some of the most striking writing that has come across my desk in the past several years have been books that my son brought to me from school. It's like, Mama, you have to read this, right? And I'm thinking, oh, why is he bringing this to me? It's a YA book, but it's books like Home of the Brave.
Yes.
This brilliant book called Granny Torelli Makes Soup, which brought me to tears. And as a writer, I want to look at that and say, I'm crying. How did she do this?
How did she do that? Exactly.
This is a good story. It is well written. There is character development here, and it should not matter that this is a YA or a children's book. Story, as you said, story is story, and we want to learn from all of this. I think that was a wonderful moment last residency, Dhonielle, when you planted that seed in our cohort and said this, you can do this too. You can be writing this, and it just lit up everyone and made them realize, wow, what can I do as a children's book writer, and what kind of YA story can I tell? That's an exciting spirit that you brought into the room that day, and it continued to reverberate throughout the residency. And I hope that continues, and hope people will explore that in addition to what else they're learning in the program.
I love that, because I always feel like when I come into a room and I talk about the fact that I write for the next generation of readers, because that's what they are. Sometimes you get the grumble adults are like, really, but why? And I'm like, why? Because it's a privilege, and because they fill you with such an energy to write that it's just such a fun and dynamic area of our community and our literature community. And I love it. It's super exciting. And I think that if you can entertain and you can impart some sort of truth to a young reader, you've changed the world, because you've changed the life of someone who's going to grow up that can be anyone. And I think that there's something powerful in that, and there's a responsibility, and I love it. I think that it is such a great opportunity for people to try out new things. What I love about the young adult reader and the child reader is that they will follow you down any rabbit hole, because they aren't jaded by having read 1,000 books and about life and in a certain way. They're looking for magic. They're looking for a question. They're looking to be perplexed and puzzled. And so they'll go down the rabbit hole with you, which means you can be experimental. It means that you can try things that you didn't think you could do. You can do anything. I mean, you bring up E.B. White, like at the line level, just it's beautiful literary fiction aimed at children. It literally teaches a certain palette of reader. Like, it's beautiful. Like, you can do so many things. And so I'm getting a lot of text messages from our cohort and from our other faculty about how they are trying to write for young people. And that I have done my job. I've done my duty, is how I feel now that I have all these messages coming in.
So when you say, especially thinking about E.B. White, looking at it at the line level, what makes a story, at the very sentence level, what makes it aimed at young adult? How is it different?
Okay, so there are books that are written that follow kid protagonists or young people, right? Like Jesmyn Ward. Jesmyn Ward has young characters in her book, but the narrative voice is as if it's an older narrator looking back on what it was like for this 15-year-old, right? They're a little bit wise beyond their years. So when I think of a young adult book, or I think about a book aimed for young people, it's anchoring us in that experience now, going back and to your 15-year-old self, and it's about the now. There's no wisdom. There's no reflection in the text. It's like, what are the 5 senses? What am I seeing now? I'm in the hot water. How does it feel? And there's an immediacy to it versus having that sort of looking back. For example, To Kill a Mockingbird is about a child, right? But it's not a book for children because of the older narrative voice telling Scout's story, leading us through. And that's the distinction. It's sinking in to the now with the protagonist that is 16, 17, 18, or 12, 11. And it's like, what do they see? Because they don't know anything outside of, you know what I mean, the tunnel vision that it means to be like a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old. They don't have the wisdom. And sitting in that is ripe with story, in trouble.
That's a challenge, right? Because yes, we are wise adults, but I think we also have a hard time being in the now, right? we are always looking back or looking way forward. So I would think that, because I bet, I'm guessing, but tell me, I'm willing to bet that people underestimate how difficult it is.
Oh, absolutely.
They think, oh, it's writing for children, right?
They think it's juvenile. They think it's elementary. They think that it's easy. And it's like, it's actually harder. Yeah. It's harder than writing for adults, because adults will fill in the details. Children accept the world as it is presented to them. So therefore, when you are presenting the world in your novels, you have to do a good job of bringing alive things that are outside of their experience. So you have to world build no matter what you're writing about. And you have to make something feel real and resonant. And it means spending time with kids and understanding the way that they question the world, the way that they speak to each other, what they don't know yet, and how that influences how they behave and how they walk through a room and what they're afraid of.
Mhm.
Like all of those things, it requires and we don't remember what it's like to be children.
Mhm.
So it requires a lot. And I don't think that our culture values childhood and children. So we have to you really have to do your research and anchor in to make sure that voice feels resonant, to make sure that it can affect a child in a way and be gripping. Because also kids are very frank and they will tell you this sucks, this is boring, right?
Right.
So you have to know pacing. You have to understand the rhythm of storytelling, because for a child, for a young adult, they're coming to books for a different purpose than adults. And the point of being a storyteller or a writer is to both entertain, which we don't think about when we're writing, especially, but when you're writing for young people, you are there to entertain and impart something, right? So my mother always says you're supposed to mix the medicine in um, in a way so that you don't taste it. It's the same thing. It's putting the medicine in with the mischief so that they're both being entertained, but also getting something, leaving something behind, like a rare jewel. I can remember all of the books that affected me as a young person, that I can literally remember that hot flash when you're reading and you're invested for the first time and you're stressed, where your heart's racing. That is the job when you're writing for young people. The heart has to pump. The kid is like, oh my goodness. And that's really hard to do.
Yeah. And that's what made the Harry Potter books, right, so successful. Like she put you in Hogwarts, right? She made that world so palpable,
Right.
both, to the imagination, but also just
So palpable.
look. Yeah.
And it makes the child reader want to always find a doorway into Diagon Alley, or always look twice at their mail to see if they got their letter to Hogwarts. That's the power of creating a world that is so resonant and so exciting that the person in the real world is like, but where is my entry point to get out of here?
Oh,
Get it there.
yes. Okay. You're reminding me now, taking me back to my childhood, of reading C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe for the first time, because we had a wardrobe in our house, and I was constantly,
You were going in to look,
trying
right?
to get through the other
I
side.
did the same thing in my grandmother's wardrobe. She was like, get out of my wardrobe. But I would go in and check just to make sure that I couldn't get through to go to Narnia, and that Mr. Tumnus and the little lamppost wasn't waiting for me on the other side.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness.
I know. So good.
So Dhonielle, how do you work with the student in the MFA program on these elements?
Well, in lots of ways, I give my students who are working on young adult and writing for children things that will help them with their audience. So I give them an extensive, robust reading list. And what I like to do is do textual analysis and have them read within the genre that they want to write into. Because I believe as a writer that you are in conversation with other writers. So if you want to write for young people, then you need to read what young people are reading. And so I task you with the same thing. And we have conversations about whose career you really admire. This is something that one of my mentors did for me, was like, okay, who's your little rabbit that you're chasing? Who is someone that you admire so much? And let's look at the books that they've put out. Let's look at the career milestones that they've hit, and you start thinking about where you fit in conversation to them. So we have lots of conversations about that. And big dreams and big goals, but really it starts at the reading. I believe to be a good writer, you have to read, and you have to read well, meaning you're not just reading to just read books. You're looking at, how did this author make me feel a certain kind of way at the line? Let me annotate and say, okay, let me break down books. So I teach how to break down a book into its parts so you can see how they put it together. So lots of we get in there at the line level, looking at the story level, and looking at the thematic level, and sort of how you can recreate some of your favorite books or books that have affected you, if that's the kind of writing you want to do. And we talk about audience and audience considerations, and remembering that at our heart, we're storytellers, and I believe that a storyteller is supposed to entertain. And so how do we keep that promise to this young person that part of the journey of the book with you, reading your book, is to entertain, but also to impart a jewel that will live within them for a long, long time as they look back and think back on their books. Just like how we're thinking about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Charlotte's Web. And they're like little jewels that we remember from our childhood.
I love that. That's exactly what it feels like. It's amazing to me to think about what's still there, right? And sometimes it works in a different way, because I hope I don't offend fans of Little Women. I will never read Little Women again because Beth broke my heart. I'm still grieving Beth. Okay.
Still grieving.
Yeah.
When she died, I was so hurt and hurt so deeply that I couldn't recover. There's certain books that have an effect like that on you. I remember Bridge to Terabithia hurt me so bad in the 4th grade when I didn't realize that you could lose your friend, that a child could die. I remember coming home from school being like, but why? And my parents were like, this happens. We lose children all the time. And it was that first realization. These are big books that create big moments of ripples, of confronting life's cruelties. And I didn't realize that children die at that point. I'm in 4th grade. I didn't know that. And then that book, my heart was pounding. I was sweating. I was devastated, and that's the power of reading. And that's why children's literature and young adult literature is so instrumental and powerful, because you get to do that, open up a kid's eyes.
So maybe this is part of the answer to what I'm about to ask you now. If I am a young adult children's book writer, why would I want to pursue an MFA degree?
Well, I think that in order to be a very good writer, you need to study it. And the MFA program allows you to take the time to study and to make those connections, and also to read outside your comfort zone, right? So that's another thing. You're going to be around poets and people who write creative nonfiction and people who write literary fiction and all sorts of kinds of work. And you learn from those things. So you're filling your well with lots of different kinds of tools that can be used at your disposal in your own fiction or nonfiction. And so I think that it's really great to be a part of a community that is diverse, and that will challenge you, but also give you the space to write and cheer you on, because that's what you need. Writing is a solitary endeavor. It's really hard. It's really lonely. And I think getting the MFA gives you a community, gives you the person that you can call and say, oh, I'm falling apart. My book's falling apart. Like, can I just talk it out with you, right? Because they were in workshop with you.
Yeah.
Right? They read part of it. So now you can say, okay, or you can read for them. You can troubleshoot. And so I think that it's a place for connection. And it's also a place to say, I'm going to privilege this time and do this for myself. And I'm going to write.
Yeah, that's right. The community continues. You know, if the listener, people listening to us don't realize this, once you graduate, it's not that these people abandon you, your classmates are gone forever. You know, you will stay connected, and you will be part of each other's writing lives for years and years to come. When I used to say that you know, when you publish your books after this, that you should not have to cold call anyone to get an endorsement for your book, because you will have this whole community of writers who know you, know your work, and would happily do it for you. Exactly.
And you just meet like-minded people. And there's nothing like that validation when you're already feeling so out of sorts. Writing also takes a pound of flesh and it takes a piece of your heart, and it's vulnerable. And it's so great to have people around you that are also in the same space and place as you.
Yeah, I think that was another realization for our students at that first residency, is that they, number one, the high level of education that they were working on, that blew their minds, but the physical aspect of the emotion of taking in the words of someone like Joy Harjo, the US Poet Laureate, who did a craft talk for us and did a reading, that you feel it, right? you see what it is to have a writer present their work, and that jewel, it's like you're getting that jewel live, like every single day of the 10 days of that residency. And I think it just, like, people didn't realize that they were going to feel it that much, feel it physically.
It would hit them and power them up as well.
Yeah.
I think that's why you come to remind yourself that, like, oh, right, this is valid. What I want to do is valid. And there are other people around me that believe in that, and that will help me shepherd my big idea into the world. Because it can feel like a lot.
And there's also just affirmation, right, about your quirks. You and I came on this call tonight, and I'm feeling like, oh man, I'm in a book, and I feel like I'm not taking care of myself very well because I'm working on this book, and then you come on and you have your hands wrapped because you've been writing. It's like, oh wait, this does take a physical toll. It's not just me.
Exactly.
It's not just me.
It's super validating, and to share tips, right? I've been texting with some writing friends and getting some ideas for, like, how do we take care of our bodies when we're in a seated position, and do I need to go get some stretching, be stretched and go do this and that, and like we trade tips. And there's something nice about having people who are also on the struggle bus with you, but validate that this is hard work.
Yes,
it's hard work. It's worth it, but it's hard.
It's worth it. So I'm going to share a few more details about the program before we go, just so that people will know how to find this. All of this information, by the way, is on our website, which is alma.edu/MFA. So these residencies that we've been discussing, one in the summer, one in the winter. The summer one takes place on the Alma campus, which is in Alma, Michigan, about an hour north of Lansing. If you know the mitten that is Michigan, we're like right in the center. We have beautiful apartment style accommodations. The photo you see here is the Opera House Ballroom, where our main lectures and readings are held. In the winter, because the undergraduates are in residence at Alma, our winter residencies are held at the Ralph McMullen Center. The winter residency this year is December 27th to January 6th. And it's a beautiful space. We'll be doing some outdoor winter activities there. I'm curious to see if we're going to have snow. I feel like snow has been happening late. I live in Connecticut, and so the snow here doesn't really show up until January. So I'm curious to see if we will get to do some snowshoeing. But our next January, though, we will have the option. You can go to the McMullen Center, but you can also participate in a residency that we're going to have at Oxford University in England. And there we will have a few lectures from Oxford professors. You'll stay in the Oxford student rooms, and we will tour the town of Oxford in addition to the university and consider its place in the literary landscape. So we're looking forward to our first international trip, the first of what I hope will be many. I mentioned Joy Harjo. Our residencies also feature visiting writers and publishing experts. Joy was with us virtually for this, but I think almost all of our other visiting writers were in person. The faculty and the visiting writers read every evening, and those readings are open to the public. We have our summer reading series, we'll have the winter reading series. And it's just a fabulous way to get to see what other writers are up to. I loved your reading. It was exciting, Dhonielle, to see children there at the bookstore for that event.
It was so much fun. It was such a highlight.
You saw this one. So the dual. So you have a couple of different options to pursue the degree. You can follow a single genre degree, which would be fiction, for example, for 2 years, poetry for 2 years, or creative nonfiction for 2 years. But often, because of the residency, the lectures that you attend are all genre. And you meet people like Dhonielle, and they set a fire in you, and you decide, well, I want to try this other genre, at least for one term. So the mixed genre degree gives you that option. You can pick a second genre for one term. You may decide to go all in for a second genre and pursue a dual genre concentration, in which you would study 3 terms in a major genre and 2 terms in a minor genre. This would extend your degree by half a year, and you would also have to do an extra residency and submit 2 creative theses in both of your chosen genres. And as I just mentioned, you would be required to attend 5 residencies, but 6 for a dual genre concentration. A successful completion of the degree requires that you work for 4 terms with a faculty mentor, a different mentor for each term. You would present a critical thesis after your 3rd term, and that thesis is also presented as a lecture when you return for that 4th residency. You have to complete a creative thesis, and as I mentioned, dual genre, you do 2 theses. So 2 creative theses, 1 critical if you're in dual genre. You deliver a public reading of selections from your creative thesis. And you also create a document reflecting on your work in the program and where you may venture next in your creative journey. And Dhonielle mentioned reading. You will also submit an extensive bibliography of all of the amazing reading that you've done during the program. I hope you consider applying. You may still apply for our winter residency. That deadline is November 1st. You'll see, again, this is on our website, but we require transcripts from college programs that you've already attended, your CV or resume, a creative writing sample. Now, I encourage you to have this be in the genre that you plan to study. If you have not written in the genre that you plan to study, then do know that if you are accepted into the program, you have to submit another writing piece that you will workshop during residency in the genre that you are going to study. You will submit 2 different essays. The first is, basically discussing who you are and why you want to pursue the degree, why you're interested in Alma in particular, your goals for the program, and any additional experience you feel that you have to offer our artistic community. We also believe that writing is important. We've mentioned that, reading is important, and we've mentioned that several times this evening. So you will have to submit an essay discussing the books and writers that have influenced you. We want to know about your reading life, what excites you, what you're interested in. Also 2 letters of recommendation. So, that's a lot, but you have time to put this together. We would love to read your work. Please check out the program on the website. Oh, I should mention tuition and financial aid. Again, this is on the website. I mention this because October 1st is coming up, and that's usually when the new FAFSA, the application for federal student aid, comes out. So you'll want to apply for that as soon as possible. We have on our website the Refer a Writer Award. Now, it's a form, and anyone can fill this out for you. Basically, it's a form that says, here's someone we think would be a great student for the MFA program. And if you are accepted and matriculate in the program, you would get a $2,000 scholarship, $1,000 per year, in the name of the person who referred you. And that's a really cool thing. I hope you take advantage of that. I also want to mention, because many of you applying for this program are employed full-time. And I found that a lot of workers don't realize that their employers offer tuition assistance programs that can pay anywhere from 50 to 75 to 100% of a program such as this. So I encourage you to look into that. If you served in the military, GI, the GI Bill benefits apply to this program. So I hope you will consider it. There are ways to make it happen, and I hope you will find a way to be with us. Also, excuse me, also on our website, I've created this workbook to help you think through why you might want to pursue an MFA, what's keeping you from it, what you need to focus on your writing. And it's a simple download, so check that out if you feel that you need some help just thinking through the program. That's my email address. Feel free to email me. I'm happy to set up a call with you if you have more questions, or if you would like to discuss the program further. I'd be happy to chat with you. So is there anything else, Dhonielle, that I haven't covered, do you think we should talk about this evening? Or have we gotten it there?
I think we've gotten it there. I just think that I wish more people privileged their writing and made the big leap and come join us. It's a really good time. You will work hard and you will also find your people. And I think that's the best part of it. You work hard, you get the words down, and you find your people. And that will take you all the way to where you need to go.
I second that. And I think that's a perfect note for us to end on. Thank you so much, Dhonielle, for spending this time with me. And thank you listening to this video for being here with us. We are with the Alma College MFA in Creative Writing. We believe your voice matters, and we hope you will join us in the program. Take care. Have a good evening. Thank you, Dhonielle. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.